Welcome back to Comic Book History. This is episode number 51. I discussed in the last episode for this series that I will be discussing some Steve Ditko creations, and I decided that the first one I'm talking about is Doctor Strange. Now you're probably thinking, why am I not talking about Spider-Man, one of my favorite characters? There's a reason why. People have talked a lot about him over the years, but not a lot of talk about Doctor Strange, another successful creation of Steve Ditko. First appearance back in Strange Tales 110, in a 5-page story, believe it or not. Yep, and then he appeared in the following issue for Strange Tales, and then he was absent for the next 2 issues. I don't know what the reason was, but then he came back in 114, and he stayed in the book into 168. Now, during this period of time, from 101 to 135, the Human Torch was the primary feature of this book, with Doctor Strange being the backup feature. And then once Human Torch left, Doctor Strange was promoted to be the lead feature of the book, while Nick Fury was basically moved to be the backup feature of the book. And this lasted until issue 168. At that point in time, the book was retitled it continued from the Strange Tales book was ended, and retitled to be Doctor Strange. Now, Ditko himself was on the art for a period of time of this, along with Gene Colan. It was also during this period of time we got introduced to Doctor Strange's Mansion, Nightmare, Dormammu, Wong, Clea, a woman who happens to be who was one time his student, and his lover's later on wife. And she's also the niece of Dormammu. Her mother is the sister of Dormammu. We also have the debut of the Ancient One, and of course, Baron Mordo. But these are some of the more noteworthy characters to show up during the Strange Tale era. And Doctor Strange's appearance mostly stayed the same. Yes, now Stan Lee was the original writer of the Doctor Strange comic book, and then for some strange reason they switched to Roy Thomas, which he tried something new with Doctor Strange. That, for what I can tell, was not very popular with people. Yes, this is basically how Doctor Strange normally looked. Let's see if I can zip here. There we go. Yeah, this is how Doctor Strange normally looks like, with this blue shirt with this white symbol on the front, the cloak of levitation. He also and the black pants. This normally was his normal appearance. This is pretty much his appearance for a long time. Excuse me, when he first showed up, this is what the comic looked like. He referred to as Master of Black Magic. Now, yeah, I'll discuss this basically. Now, when the book was retitled to simply Doctor Strange, Marvel did something really well. More like Roy Thomas did something really different with the character. He gave the character a mask, something the character didn't really need. And so Doctor Strange, when he was wearing a mask, he was referred to as Stephen Sanders. Yes, and apparently Wong did not even know about who was underneath the mask. It's strange. It's something that's never brought up today when it comes to comic books, when it comes to Doctor Strange. I mean, yes, Marvel occasionally put the thing in trade, but this period of time was never referenced. And he also wore gloves this period of time, though this version of Doctor Strange's costume will return in the 1990s. I'll discuss that soon. Now, pretty much also this period of time, he had a brief crossover with the Avengers. Yes, where it involved the Black Knight, where he appeared in the book, and then he crossed over with the Avengers, where he had been turned to stone. He was basically popped up there, and then he was turned to stone by the Enchantress in the pages of another book that later I'll talk about in a minute. And that was the reason, and just basically just did that for some reason. He also, during this period of time, he appeared, this before the mask thing, he also had his very first meeting with Spider-Man in Amazing Spider-Man number 2. Now, this annual is basically famous, well, not only being the second annual for Amazing Spider-Man, but also the first time that Spider-Man and Doctor Strange ever met. And because of this annual, writers love pairing these two up together a lot over the years. They would later team up in several issues of Marvel Team Up, actually many issues. They did one-shots, mostly put a lot of the time whenever Spider-Man, when these two teamed up, they would know team up basically in pages of his book. Not a lot of time in Doctor Strange book for some reason. Maybe because he was doing something else. And then the book ended. Now, the Doctor Strange book, now also who they fight? A guy named Xanadu, who Doctor Strange fought a few times over the years. Not many. He's not really big Doctor Strange villain per se, but he is Doctor Strange villain. And then with the Doctor Strange, after the main book itself, this book got canceled issue 183. Basically, from 161 to 83, roughly 15 issues, it was canceled due to low sales. And Roy Thomas still had loose and the wrap-up, namely the Nameless Ones. Basically introduced in the final issue of the book, where involved a friend of his who actually died, but then later on, basically the story like, oh, it was going to be another issue? Nope, book got canceled. So they continued the thing in a page. No, Roy Thomas continued plot in a book that he was writing at that point, which was Named with a Submariner. Yep, he continued it there with Gene Cohen doing fantastic on the artwork. Yeah, Gene Cohen, I think all 3 issues. Where Namor got involved in this, and then we have the finale for this wrap up in Incredible Hulk 126. We fought a character called Nightcrawler. No, not X-Men's Nightcrawler, a different character. And this ended Doctor Strange. He stopped wearing the mask, and he effectively retired. This lasted for a few years before he was brought back in Marvel Feature number 1. Now, if you read it's like, wait, I thought he was retired. How'd they come back? Well, there's a backup story that explains it. Yes, there is a backup story in the book that explains how he came back. He just came back because Barrymore was posing as him. That was simply the reason for it. And this also was a point in time reveal that Wong didn't even know who Doctor Strange really was because he knew him only with the mask. So, apparently this got popular enough. This is later continued in pages of Marvel Premiere. And this is also a period of time he was also forming the Defenders. Yes, he formed the Defenders in Marvel Feature number 1 with the Hulk, the Submariner, and the Silver Surfer, even though he didn't really do anything in the story at all, and yet he's considered a founding member of the Defenders. Of course, he was featured in the book for the next 2 issues, and then eventually the Defenders would get their own ongoing series. And whenever Doctor Strange wasn't featured in the book, usually it's because something big was going on in his own book, mainly at that point, which was basically Marvel Premiere, which he was in book basically issues 3 to 14. If you're curious, though, who was in the first 2 issues of this series, I think it was Red Wolf. Yes, Red Wolf was in the first 2 issues of the series, and after he left, he was replaced by Iron Fist, and then it was Hercules, and there was a bunch of other characters after that. So, after we wrapped up this feature, he then got another ongoing series. This one lasted a heck of a lot longer than the original one. The original was 15 issues, this one was 81 issues and had 1 annual published. That's not a joke, it had 1 annual published. Now, Roy Thomas was the writer of the original volume for Doctor Strange. This volume, I think, was also written by Roy Thomas as well. Let me take a look here. I don't think it was it? No, basically, Ditko basically writing the Strange Tale stuff. Well, later on, we have Bill Everett take over the book. And, of course, Roy Thomas basically would take up the book. Let's see. We have Echohart, who... Let's see, first was Roy Thomas and Echohart took over the book. And then when it became an ongoing series, it basically had, well, him on the writing team. And then, of course, we also introduced Topaz. And basically, mostly with just Steve Echohart writing the book a lot of time. This book lasted for a pretty good period of time. And then the book ended. Yep. And issue 81 with the apparent death of Doctor Strange. Yes, that's how the book ended, with his apparent death. Later on, basically, he was moved over to the revived Strange Tales. This was the second revival of the series after the series was brought back after his ongoing series, and then basically restored to the original numbering and became simply a book that introduced us to Dr. Voodoo. At the time, Brother Voodoo. Then pretty much when they revived Strange Tales, he basically shared the book with Cloak and Dagger. Not as a team of book per se, but as a regular anthology book. And these two would take turns of who would be the lead feature of the book. This lasted for 14 issues. And then when the book ended, also during this period of time, this is when the Defenders made a brief return to the book to wrap up a loose thread from the Action Bane ongoing series, which Defenders have been canceled at this point. Yes, Doctor Strange will occasionally appear in Defenders. Some of his, basically, stuff related to his character development would happen in the pages of Defenders whenever he wasn't appearing in his own book. Mostly he was just there just to pal around. Though, originally his house was used as the base of operations for Defenders. Well, that was until he decided, after Nighthawk joined the team, he decided to have Nighthawk buy a ranch, and that became new base for the Defenders for pretty much the rest of the run up until we became new Defenders or moved into a house owned by Angel of the X-Men. Doctor Strange at that point had basically just cut ties with Defenders, don't do anything to do with him anymore. Also, I should also point out, though, in the Volume 2, he had several characters with Count Dracula, of all people. Oh, yes, he did. He also apparently ended the threat of vampires for several years. This also apparently ended the time of Blade. I'll get to him in another video. And then toward the end of the 80s, we had the revival of the Doctor Strange ongoing series, simply titled Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme, which lasted for 90 issues. Yes, also Doctor Strange has stopped, about partway into the run, he has stopped wearing his classic attire and adopt more of an all-red look for him, while keeping close limitation. They also introduced two other characters, one named Vincent, yes, a character named Vincent, and another character called Strange, who basically had Doctor Strange's old Roy Thomas look. This book basically was during the 90s. He basically helped form the Midnight Suns. He also formed the Night Stalkers. Basically, in the way Doctor Strange was basically the lead figure of the supernatural stuff in the 1990s. And then by the time his series ended, he also had his book one time actually that time into an actual crossover. We also had a backup feature in the book for the first couple of years, known as Book of the Vishanti, which more explored the stuff with the Darkhold book that was introduced in Jerry Conway's time on Werewolf by Night. Once the book ended, that was the last Doctor Strange ongoing series for almost 20 years. Yes, not kidding about that. Because when this book ended, there was nothing much for Doctor Strange to do. Because this book ended, it started I think it was 89, I think it was. Let's see. Let me look up see when the book ended. Let's see, where are you? Oh, it was actually 19 issues, not 14, excuse me. Yeah. Now, the Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme title lasted from November 1988 to June 1996. That clarifies the 20-year thing. And Peter Giles was the writer of the book most of the time anyways. I met the guy. Didn't talk much about Doctor Strange and writing the book very much. Let's see. He wrote the book for the first 4 issues. He was also the last writer of the previous one for the series. Let's see. Does it list off here who replaced him? Let's see here. No, it wasn't. After his ongoing series ended, he had several mini-series. There was Flight of Bones, which for some reason was considered to be his third one, despite the fact it was a mini-series. There was also Witches, Strange, which was in 2004, The Oath by Brian K. Vaughan, really good mini-series. He had many one-shots over the years, several of them. You have Doctor Strange into Sabella, Doctor Strange and Doctor Triumphant, Spider-Man / Doctor Strange, Way to Dust to Death, and Doctor Strange, What Disturbs You, Stephen? Yeah, so basically after his series ended, he didn't do a lot. From 1996 to about 2000, I'd say 05, I think it was, he didn't do a heck of a lot aside from having 3 miniseries. Mostly he just popped up for occasional appearances, like guest star appearances, like in Mythic Spider-Man. Mostly Marvel kept him on the spotlight for several years until Brian Michael Bendis decided to become established a retcon with the character. Was it retcon his backstory? No. Retcon had been part of an actual group of geniuses, per se. A group known as the Illuminati. No, not the Secret Society Illuminati. Not that one. Oh, no. This group was comprised not only Doctor Strange, but also Black Bolt, Professor Charles Xavier, Mr. Fantastic, Iron Man, Yes, these guys all comprised. Now, Black Panther was supposed to join the group, but he initially declined, though he later joined anyways. And he was initially part of this group. It popped up a few times. Mostly they discussed like the Sentry. They discussed the time when there was also the time when they sent the Hulk to space. Yeah, they're responsible for that. And that's the only thing about the group that was ever out to the public about this particular group. This group basically was retconned to be established after the Kree Skrull War, believe it or not. Yes, and this group laid out one shot lead to Civil War 1. They also had miniseries, which involved them getting their hands on the Infinity Stones, which basically they did Marvel with nothing but for several years until Infinity. Then, well, pretty much Doctor Strange was basically relegated to just guest appearances for a while, and then after Civil War 1, he joined the New Avengers, which he was part of the group up until around issue 50, where he actually left the group to find a new Sorcerer Supreme because he'd be using some dark magic. He took some parts, if you're curious though, did he take part in Civil War 1? No. He told Tony Stark, don't call me again. Did he take part in Secret Invasion? No. He was actually absent for that. But what about World War Hulk? He did take a small role in this particular event, mostly because it relates to what happens in the Hulk book. But as for other events, well, Dark Reign, of course, he searched for a new Sorcerer Supreme. He didn't do a heck of a lot when he basically during his period of time, aside from introducing a new Sorcerer Supreme, aka Dr. Voodoo. And, well, he didn't do very much. He also stopped wearing his traditional look. He basically was like a trench coat, like a regular clothes. He did this for several years. Eventually, he did rejoin New Avengers when the relaunch happened, like right at the conclusion of the first arc of the relaunch book in 2010. And he remained part of the New Avengers group up until 2015. Yep, he would remain for a long period of time. He basically would stay at the Avengers Mansion because that's where the Avengers were headquartered. And they were there for a pretty good period of time. Mostly put, he took, in case you're curious still, did he take part in Siege? Not really. He didn't have a role in that particular event. How about Chaos War? Yes, he did have a role in Chaos War. Shadowland, he did not have any role in it. He basically didn't appear in that event at all because the event had nothing to do with him. So he didn't show up for that. Fear itself, he kind of did. Mostly it was a minor role he played in that particular event. And then came AVX. An event, he didn't do anything. Yes, if you read the entire book, I don't think he even shows up in the actual book itself. I don't think he does anything during that particular event. Nope. And then we have the New Avengers book by Jonathan Hickman coming right after the Volume 2 ended from Bendis, because Doctor Strange was kept in the book because I want to keep it there because of the Illuminati stuff. If you want to know what happened in this book, you have to read the book because it was quite interesting. Mostly, he did get an actual one shot to explain what the heck he was up, like a story for him for the New Avengers Annual. Mostly, he didn't do a lot of anything because he was there just be there as for group shots. He didn't do a lot of fighting per se. There wasn't a lot of development. He did play a small role in Time Runs Out. He played a role in Secret Wars. Yeah, he played a role in Secret Wars. Oh yeah, in case you're curious though, the events between AVX and Secret Wars, there was actually a few big ones. There was Infinity. He played a very small role in that particular event, mostly in the Avengers time. Okay. What about Rachel Sin? Yeah, he did play a role in this that led to a miniseries with the Punisher, believe it or not, called Magical Bullets. Axis, he did play a big role in this one. Yeah, mostly he was there just to have Doctor Doom reverse the inversion that basically Scarlet Witch and he did in order to turn the heroes back from being evil to good. He took part in the original version, and that's it. He mostly his role in that event was very minor at best. In Secret Wars, he played a big role in that particular book, mostly as a supporting character when he was the sheriff of Battleworld. He also appeared in the tie-ins, and eventually after that, Marvel decided, okay, let's give him an ongoing series because his movie's coming out soon. Yep, an ongoing series I just recently wrapped up at the first writer's run for the book, Jason Aaron, when they basically brought back book in 2016. It was late 2015. They brought the book back, and then pretty much. Oh, come on, seriously. Well, to be continued, because I got to buy dinner. Yep. So, to be continued in part 2. Hopefully I don't get any more interruptions. And I really hate this.